Stand by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5,
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2, 1. Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, a.k.a. Derringer. Today is Sunday, January 19th, and you are listening to episode 244 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for planet-side news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. So what's been going on with me? A lot of planet-side... I'll be talking about what's been going on in the first topic this week, so I really can't talk about it in this little show intro blurb. But other than that, told you guys last week I got a 3D printer, been playing around with that, printing board game accessories and flexible cats and, stupid stuff, because that's what you do when you have a 3D printer. Other than that, playing quite a bit of PlanetSide 2. And I'm actually recording this super early on a Sunday because I've got to pack up the car and take my daughter back to college today. I know a lot of you listeners out there are starting college again this week, so as you're traversing back and forth between classes, don't forget to listen to past episodes of the Instant Action Podcast if you want to get all your awesome news and stuff like that. Like I said, my daughter is up at the University of New Hampshire, so I will be making that trek today. So I've got to get this show recorded and then get on the road so I can get home and play some more PlanetSide 2. So enough about me. What's in store for this week's show? Well, first, like I alluded to, I have some PTS news to talk about that has the overall PlanetSide community kind of quivering in anticipation right now. Then I have the Empire Strength game update that came to both PC and PS4 to go over. And then if there's time, which there most likely will be, I'm going to revisit the server merge question that is popping up again on Reddit based on last night's Connery invasion of Emerald. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. Yeah, I didn't even mention that I think I'm catching a cold too, but enough about that. First topic this week is about the public test server. So anybody who's been on Reddit recently knows that Andy Seitz posted a quick topic that said, hey, everyone, you might have noticed the PTS became inaccessible after the January game update was published earlier this week. Without going into too much detail, we will be using it to perform some extensive closed access testing of a fairly sizable update that we plan to release in February with some select members of the PS2 community. More details to come when the time is right, but I wanted to make sure you all knew the reason why PTS was currently unavailable. And again, that message was posted on Reddit from Andy Seitz. And obviously it kicked off a little bit of a firestorm in that Reddit post with folks happy. I saw a lot of comments that were along the lines of using the PTS to test stuff, how novel, or thank you for using the public test server for what it was intended to be used for. At this point, I can say that select members of the PS2 community, I was one of those folks that was selected to see what they're working on for the February game update. And while I'm not under a non-disclosure agreement or anything like that, the folks over there at Daybreak Games have asked that I not talk about what I was playing, talk about what I have seen. And I'm a man of my word. I will not be talking about what I've played or what I have seen. I can say, though, that they gave me a bunch of accounts so that I could reach out to various people in-game to get them into the playtests that are going on the PTS. And it took me... after watching the presentation that they put together, I immediately knew of a few outfits that I wanted to invite to it because of things that I had seen. And I also knew that it would kind of make other people that I play with and am friendly with in game upset that they were not selected to play the stuff that's out on the PTS. And I've apologized to quite a few people for not selecting them at this point. I feel bad that I couldn't bring everybody that I know in game into this. There are quite a few of you out there that feel slighted that you weren't included with this. But I just want to let those folks know that this is a very small amount of people that are testing this right now. And in the Reddit post that Andy put out there, Justin also chimed in and wrote the following. He said, clarifying a couple questions about the folks participating in this round of testing. There is indeed a mix of outfit leaders, active and legacy, as well as a few others from the corners of the community. We're keeping this group relatively small at the moment, not for exclusivity's sake, but because our playtesting needs are still scaling up, and we have to see how things roll with this smaller group before bringing in more of you. But our goal with this update is to get it to PTS for the larger community as soon as humanly possible. And this testing strategy lets us get needed feedback so we can do that. And his TLDR on that is internal testing leads to dozens of outside players, leads to hundreds of outside players, and then leads to everybody being able to play the content that they're currently testing on this relatively small scale currently. So again, I really hope folks listening to me that might feel slighted that they weren't included in this first round, just be patient because it is a really small amount of people that are actually touching this stuff. And I can only say that I did my absolute best to make sure that I chose folks for this that I thought would give the best feedback regarding this. And in my selection of folks for this, I made sure to choose outfits that are large, or I consider to be decently large. I picked outfits that are active. In fact, the last playtest that we did was during ops for at least one of those outfits. So you can know that they sacrificed doing ops that night, regularly scheduled ops that night to do this playtest. And the last thing is I made sure that they were outfits that were really active within the community itself and were willing to give feedback directly to the developers on what that we saw and what we actually got to play. So I really hope me saying this can kind of dispel some of the sour feelings that some people in the community have, because it was never my intention, or it's not my intention, and it's out of my control, kind of the size of the amount of people that get pulled into this. And I did my best. You guys have to understand that I have the best intentions of PlanetSide 2 in my heart. I love this game. I podcast about this damn game. So the fact that I've been taking a lot of shots from people lately on this kind of hurts me to the core and makes me not even want to participate in stuff like this in the future, because if I'm just going to get shit on by various members in the community for not including them, it kind of hurts my feelings, and especially when I feel that I have the absolute best interests of PlanetSide 2 and the future of this game at heart. So the last thing that I'm going to say about this is there's some really cool stuff out there on the PTS. It's all scheduled, and they've said that they plan to release this stuff in February. So, I mean, we're already more than halfway through January. So it's just next month. And Rel has mentioned in the game update, which I'm going to talk about next, there's a looking forward statement at the end of it. He even said that there's going to be a live stream later in January that explains the hush-hush super secret stuff that they've been going over. So I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this month, everything that's on this secret test that everybody's all crazy about is out in the open, and everybody knows exactly what's going on. So just sit tight, folks. There's some pretty cool stuff out there, and It's being tested. Feedback is being given. Don't worry. Feedback is definitely being given on this, and it's coming from, people in the U.S., East Coast folks, West Coast folks, guys in Europe. There's people from the Miller server represented. Cobalt's represented on there too. You don't have to worry about it. Every server is being represented. Yeah, I only have control over the people that I put into this, but I think that really good feedback is being provided to the devs regarding this. And just sit tight because everybody will see this sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, PTS is locked down. Let's move on to the live game. So in the live game, January 15th and January 16th, 15th was the PC side, 16th was the PS4 side, the Empire Strength game update that I talked about last week because it was on PTS for a week, has now come to live. So I went over pretty much all of this on last week's show, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this stuff. I'm kind of going to gloss over a lot of this. Because, again, I just talked about this stuff last week. I wish the devs would give me a couple more weeks of lead time before dropping something directly from PTS onto live, but it is what it is. So now on PC side, PS4 side, the continent rotation and Empire Strength changes are live. So they say now territory matters at all times. Each empire gains strength when key facilities are captured and when continent events are won. When one faction reaches 100 empire strength or more, a meltdown alert will fire off, provided no other alerts or events are active, and the victorious faction will lock the continent itself. There are multiple ways to gain empire strength. If you maintain a link to an enemy warp gate, it's worth 50 strength. If you maintain a link to both enemy warp gates, it's worth 100 strength. If you own the center base, it's worth 15 strength, 30 on Esamir. If you own a major facility, it's worth 15 strength. Esamir's major facilities are worth 20. And then finally, each continent event win is worth 10 strength. And that is the only permanent form of Empire Strength that is available in the game. Because again, maintaining links, owning center base, or owning major facilities, that could flip-flop back and forth as the game goes on. Winning an event just awards you static Empire Strength that does not go away. We got a chance to play a little bit of this the past few days, and there was I played a lot of it last night actually, and saw a bunch of this stuff go through. It's a good. I appreciate the change because again, it does make territory feel like it does matter a bit more than it used to, and I've seen a lot more people pushing to try and hit enemy warp gates now because that's worth a lot of strength. And we'll have to see where it actually goes from there. Next, Coal Tier. I mentioned it last week. They were planning on disabling it. It is now disabled. They will plan to reintroduce it as a standard combat zone at a later date. As they said, it had been in a weird spot. It was confusing for new players, but in a future update, they're going to basically make it a fourth continent that people can fight on, and it should be decent for off hours because there could be some good fights on a smaller continent. Next, there were a bunch of infantry changes that came in this game update. Starting with the mini chain gun, its minimum refire rate was reduced to 80 milliseconds. Its maximum was reduced to 71. The ballistic rapid refire toggle, that's the BRRT, no longer reduces the maximum refire rate because it's built into the gun by default. And the BRRT no longer has a hidden projectile speed buff. Revive grenades for combat medics, they reduced the detonation time by 1 second so they feel more responsive. You should no longer get a notification if you attempt to revive yourself, because of course you can't. And NSO defector units can no longer be revived by revive grenades, which was a bug. Next, the proximity mine has been renamed to Fuse, and this is the proximity mine for the NSO characters only. They also fixed the metal tracking issues. They also refunded the skill lines, and they also made sure that it now works with Mine Carrier. The tank mine also for NSOs, they fixed the metal tracking issues on that one as well. also refunded the skill line and also made sure that that one works with Mine Carrier as well. Next, for the maxes and defectors, because the defector is technically a max, the Nanite Auto Repair defensive slot. They felt that this was rarely used based on other people using kinetic armor or ordnance armor instead, so it has received a direct buff. It's basically doubling the health restored per second. The NSO, and that's for both maxes and defectors. But for the defector in general, there were a few other changes as well. Again, they're no longer revivable with revive grenades, which is important. They can still capture points for the time being. Just be aware of that. You also can receive them for free during the maximum pressure event. You should also be able to hear them walking now. They fixed it. It fixed its loadout screen camera, and they also fixed some of the various animation-related issues with it. I still have seen many of them out there with a human head on them, so I don't think all the animation-related issues have been fixed. Next, for the weapons of the NSO defector, its grenade printer, the cooldown speed was increased by 20%, which was good because I felt like the cooldown was awful on it. It is properly tracking weapon metals, and they changed its minimap firing signature from 1 to 60. I'm not 100% sure what that even means. And finally, they gave it a melee weapon. It now has defector claws, which are able to earn weapon medals as well. Moving on to the abilities of the defector, the time bomb, that's the the kamikaze effect. The movement speed penalty was reduced down to only 10%. The Seraph Shield, which is the other ability that they receive, it has new audio now. The shield can be toggled off, which is good. Its movement speed penalty was reduced slightly down to 40%, and its shield duration was changed from 8 seconds at all ranks. So now it goes from 8 at rank 1 all the way up to 12 at rank 4. So it's 8, 10, 11, and then 12. Also for the defectors, its defensive slot, they got 2 new defensive slot items. First is Ablation Mesh, and this is when you activate Time Bomb or Seraph Shield, the damage mitigation received from those abilities is increased by 50% for 2 seconds. The second one is Hypermatic Servos. This one removes the movement speed penalty of Time Bomb and reduces the movement speed penalty of Seraph Shield to 25%. And in addition, you're able to accelerate into sprint more quickly at all times. I think the Hypermatic Servo one is not too bad, but I can see usage for the Ablation Mesh one as well to get your Time Bomb into an engagement to use properly. Moving on to the Javelin. Obviously, this is the NSO ground vehicle, which surprisingly I haven't used yet, and I don't know why I haven't used this yet. So I need to get off my ass and play around with the Javelin. It's probably because I haven't logged into my NSO character in a bit, but I'm going to rectify that next time I play. Some general changes to it. Its vehicle terminal cost was reduced down to 100 nanites. It also now uses its own experience type instead of the flashes to award experience. I'm sure that's more for tracking than anything else. Also, when using a repair tool, it will show particle effects in the correct location. No big deal. Spitfire turrets will now target riders on a Javelin, which wasn't working before. Also, overall, it should bounce less while moving along rough terrain, but it is still slightly, it's also less prone to nose up while airborne, and should be stable more overall. The performance slots on this speed chassis will now increase afterburner fuel recharge by 30%. Combat chassis allows greater control of side-to-side movement while using afterburner, and the agility chassis provides lift from the ground when afterburner is exchanged. And then finally in this game update, there are all the miscellaneous changes, fixes, and additions. First and foremost, these are all for the NSO, the Tank Buster, the Zephyr, the Shredder, the Dalton, and the LB00 Python are all correctly tracking directives. The NSW Survivor metal weapons can now be earned. I know that's one that everybody was getting via the 31 Days of Araximus. It wasn't tracking metals, and now it is. Next, the SR200, that's the NSO sniper rifle. The Tier 3 long rifle directive no longer requires an Araxium medal, instead just a gold medal. They fixed some camo-related issues. They fixed the unstable icon showing for locked continents. The nano armor kits and medical applicators you get from the 30-year anniversary. These are the AE versions. They work correctly on NSOs. The Thumper and Vanquisher's disruptor ammo shouldn't sap energy from vehicles anymore. And they also fixed some additional edge cases related to falling through the floor in the game, which I haven't had any falling through the floor issues recently, but my most recent one is spawning in a biolab and having the floors kind of spaz out on me graphically and being able to see through them. And the final thing on this is that looking forward topic portion that I mentioned in the first topic on this week's show. And Rel wrote, "Hey there, in this month's update, on top of the bug fixes and NSO tuning, we've introduced and rebranded the Victory Point system as Empire Strength. Doing this now sets us up for our big update later in quarter one. It gets players used to taking territories for strategic value, hint, hint, and alleviates the arbitrary 3-continent events then meltdown alert cycle we were in before. This cycle led to continents staying open for 5 hours or more if players were unable to achieve 41% territory control after the 3-continent events were complete. We'll be having a live stream later this month, the 31st or sooner, to reveal all the hush-hush super secret stuff we've been working on, and we'll be announcing the live stream date once we've got the full loop feeling cohesive. It's going to be awesome. We'll continue teasing out some bits and pieces as we move closer to the announcement release, so be sure to check PlanetSide 2 on Twitter every now and again." So, like I said, that's what I said before. They're planning on releasing all the stuff that's kind of being hidden later on this month. And since we're halfway through the month, that's not too far away. So there's your entire game update. Let's move on to our third topic this week. Now, I know at the beginning of the show, I said I was going to talk about merging servers, and that's going to have to wait because I forgot that PlanetSide 2 Nanite Appreciation Week is going on in-game. And this actually started on the, let's see, what date did this actually start? God, I forget what day it actually started. But either way, it's running through February 2nd, so it's live right now. All the Araximus deals are back in the depot, and this is both on the PC and PS4 at their original sale price, except obviously on PS4, you do not get access to the Arena Bundle. But if anybody wants the Arena Bundle, this is a good time to pick it up, even though it's not that great, but there's not terrible stuff in there. But again, don't forget, this is your chance to get anything that was in the Araximus 31 Days of Araximus deals. I mean, the bundles, this is a way to get heroic boosts and stuff like that. And it's running, like I said, right until February 2nd. So don't forget to hop in and do that. And then also, they're getting ready to celebrate the Lunar New Year, and that's going to be on January 24th. They're going to be offering a new Lunar New Year bundle for 499 Daybreak Cash, so $5. You're going to get a 1-day experience boost. You're going to get the gold NS7 PDW and also a Year of the Rat decal. And that's going to run from Friday, January 24th to Sunday, February 2nd. So at the end of this week, yeah, you'll be able to pick up the Year of the Rat stuff if you're looking for it. A gold NS7 PDW for $5, that's not terrible. The PDW is a decent gun too. So again, like I said, I was going to talk about merging, and I'll talk about that next, but I wanted to make sure to get the news out there about Nanite Appreciation Week, because if you missed out on anything during the 31 Days of Araximus, this is your chance to get it again. All right, fourth and final topic this week is merging servers, like I said, because there's a lot of stuff going around right now. especially after last night's invasion of Emerald by Connery about potentially merging the Connery and Emerald servers. Because I played it last night. It started at like 10:30 my time Eastern, which was wicked late. But I mean, I was on until at least midnight my time playing in this because there were multiple continents open. There were fights going on everywhere. It was really, really good. There was so much stuff going on. There were so many new players I'd never seen before dropping and huge galaxy balls going on all over the place. I mean, it was a good time. I'm not going to lie. However, I will say with 100% certainty that there is no chance that the devs are going to be merging servers anytime soon, because some of the stuff that we're testing is indicative that there's not going to be a server merge, and that's really all that I can say about that. A few months ago, I would have said yes, please merge Connery and Emerald. Let's get multiple continents open during prime time, and all kinds of stuff like that, and it would have been great. However, I have seen things that cannot be unseen. So as it stands right now, take it from me, there will not be any server merging anytime soon. So hopefully it will quell any noise about merging servers going forward. At least wait until the devs have their live stream and talk about some of the stuff that's behind the scenes, and then we'll move from there. All right, that's going to be it for this week. So let's move on to housekeeping.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
So I do have an email this week, and this comes from Silent Saturn, and they wrote, Derringer, I just want to say thanks for your efforts creating a podcast covering the game we all love. I also want to share the story about how I came to find out about your show. I started listening about a year and a half ago after a chance encounter with a TR player on the Emerald server playing on Indar. I'm mainly Vanu and an engineer main like yourself. Anyway, I had a pretty good base going at Burgess one evening, then went north towards Xeno to get some cordium when I saw a fledgling TR base on the hillside to the east of Xeno. It had a silo, a flail, and maybe a few walls, but most importantly, the silly guy hadn't built a skywall shield yet. Perfect flail fodder, I thought. Luckily, I already had a flail built, went to get the flail target marker and switched to infiltrator, snuck back to destroy the base, and out of range by 25 meters. I tried to take some pot shots on some ant nearby, but to no avail. The base's flail was firing off, but I thought nothing of it since I wasn't in range to hit his base. I cut my losses and went back to Burgess, while trying to figure out what to do next. Suddenly, mortar shells landed near my base at the northmost edge, but didn't damage anything. It just so happened that the owner of the TR base had the same hopes I had of flailing a base into oblivion, only to have them dashed by math. I can't remember who taunted who first, but we had a good chuckle about how inept our flails were. We kept talking for a little bit after that, and that's when he mentioned your podcast, and even went so far as to call himself a co-host. So that player's name was Romus. And he seemed real proud of himself and even went so far as to say you'd be pleased that he steered someone to the podcast, almost like that was a rare thing. Anyway, I've been listening ever since, and your podcast is quite often my first listen Monday morning, even before Magic Tavern. P.S. Will we ever get any more tips from Romus? Thanks, Silent Saturn. That's a great question. Poor Romus. I know he hasn't done a tip in a long time, unfortunately. I know he switched jobs, moved, and had a whole bunch of real life stuff go on. I see him every now and then on Twitter. But Romus, if you're listening to this week's show, Silent Saturn and I both miss you. All right, that's going to be it for this week's show. How can you get in touch with me or the show? First, visit my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. You can email me like Silent Saturn did at instantactionshow@gmail.com, and you can also follow the show on Twitter at instactpodcast. But in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. But finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that join combat, formerly known as Instant Action button. Derringer out.
Get your arms combined.